Hello friends, my name is Sarah and I'm the face behind One Craft Avenue, and today I'm showing you 5 different ways to do sublimation without a sublimation printer. Not only that, but I'm going to show you how to use these supplies to customize your own sublimation blanks and make your own projects. So make sure you stay to the end because I'm saving the best for last. So the first option for doing sublimation without a sublimation printer is using Cricut's Infusible ink sheets. These are Cricut's way of providing you with a sublimation print that is backed with a transfer tape so that you can use it with your Cricut cutting machine. These come in solid colors and in patterns as well. You just have to be careful when you're working with these sheets because if your hands are a little bit sweaty like mine, you might leave fingerprints all over them and that makes them completely non-usable. This is the reason I personally prefer to wear gloves whenever I'm working with these Infusible ink sheets. Now you probably know that you can use these with your Cricut and you can weed them out with a design or something, but I thought of using it as a wrap with a sublimation glass blank, and this is the project that I'm going to show you now. I love the floral pattern and I wanted to use it for the entirety of a cup. So I wrapped this floral infusible ink sheet around my sublimation glass can cup and I used the shrink wrap to get a tight pressure around the infusible ink wrap. As you can see with the shrink wrap, you're going to have to use your heat gun to get that tight pressure around your wrap. At the time, I only had a convection oven, so I baked it at 375 degrees for about 9 or 10 minutes, and you'll need to rotate it in the middle of the time. I think it turned out great, and it was a unique idea to use infusible ink sheets if you even don't have a Cricut cutting machine. Now your second option for doing sublimation without a sublimation printer is by using sublimation markers. These sublimation markers are by Artesprix and they are very similar to Cricut's infusible ink pens, but these are far more superior in my opinion. They come in different tip styles and in different color styles too, and this is their basic color set in fine tip. I personally love their fine tip sublimation markers because I can use it with an adapter in my Cricut. And then they have sublimation markers in pastel colors as well, but for the time being, the pastel markers only come in chisel tip, unlike the basic color set where you can choose the tip style that you like. I personally love the chisel tip, but for coloring freehand, and I use the fine tip with my Cricut. So with these markers, you can just color or write on plain copy paper, and that will be your sublimation design that's ready for you to transfer with a heat press. But if you'd like to write a mirrored text, you can either use a Sharpie or a pencil and then trace it on the flip side of the paper. You could also use a light pad or even a window if it's still sunny outside. And also, as I mentioned earlier, you can use your fine tip sublimation markers with an adapter in your Cricut. You'll just need to open clamp B, place your finger right below it and then push up to get the adapter out. And then insert your own adapter, and I'll link these in the description box down below if you want to use them with your sublimation markers. Next up is Sublimation Stamp Pads. These are by Artesprix as well, and I promise I'm not paid to tell you that about these, but I have been using these for quite some time now and I completely love them. These are essentially stamp pads, but they are formulated with sublimation ink. So with these, you can utilize any stamps that you have or even use a blending brush to pick up color off of the stamp and color on a plain copy paper. So sometimes I would use these sublimation stamp pads to ink a rubber stamp like this one. You can get creative with the ink and do a couple inks in the same stamp, and then that way you'll have like a design stamped on your paper that's ready to go. Another option of using these sublimation stamp pads is by using a gel press plate, and then you can use the stamp pads to apply ink to the plate, and this way you can apply a stencil and then you'll be able to pick up a design. So for this project I used the butterfly stencil, and then I picked up a bunch of butterflies that are ready for me to sublimate. And I did this actually for a blog post, and I'll make sure I'll put the link for that blog post in the description box as well. So now we covered 3 ways to do sublimation without a sublimation printer, and the 4th way is using sublimation ink refills. These are tiny bottles full of magic, aka iron-on ink or sublimation ink. These are very concentrated, so a little goes a long way. I sometimes use these on a gel press plate as well with some isopropyl alcohol to get a full sheet of color the easiest way. So I used this technique to customize a bottle opener. My idea was to create like a colored background, and then I wanted to stamp a design onto it. So for the colored background, I just dropped a couple ink drops with some alcohol, and then I dipped my paper to make sure that I get a full sheet of color. And then once the paper was dried, I used my rubber stamp as well, and I inked it with Sublimation Stamp Pads, and I stamped my floral pattern on top. And I like how this bottle opener turned out. Now lastly, and this is by far my favorite thing ever, and it is Sublimation Acrylic Paint. This is again by Artesprix, sorry not sorry, and this comes in a package. The package has 4 sublimation colors and a white mixing agent. They give you this white mixing agent so that you can mix your own shades of color. So the package comes in blue, yellow, red, and black sublimation acrylic paints, and then they give you the white to mix your own shades like I mentioned before. Now for this project, I used my gel press plate again, and I did paint drops on the plate, and then I went in with Floetrol. Floetrol is a mixing agent that we use when you do an acrylic paint pour, but that's for another video if you'd like. And then after that, I went in with my mixed media paper to pick up the paint, which made this like feathery effect. And here are some other things that I did with Sublimation Acrylic Paint. It turned out great aside from the pressing mistakes that I did. I also customized these magnets using the squeegee painting technique, which is basically dragging the paint with a squeegee across a mixed media paper. And for these magnets, I did an acrylic paint pour but with sublimation paint, and we can do that in another video if you'd like. I'll put down all the materials that I used in the description box down below. And I'll also share a few blog posts where I used Artesprix Sublimation supplies. I hope this video inspired you to get started with sublimation even though you don't have a sublimation printer. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments down below. And as always, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next video.